everybody! Today we'll be reading Pinocchio. Chapter 1. Once upon a time there was a king? My little readers will immediately say, "No, children, you are mistaken. Once upon a time there was a piece of wood. It was not fine wood, but a simple piece of wood from the wood yard, the kind we put in the stove and fireplace, so as to make a fire and heat the room. I do not know how it happened, but one beautiful day, a certain old woodcutter found a piece of wood, this kind of wood, in his shop. The name of the old man was Antonio, but everybody called him Master Cherry on account of the point of his nose, which was always shiny and purplish, just like a ripe cherry. As soon as Master Cherry saw that piece of wood, he was overjoyed, and rubbing his hands contentedly, and he mumbled to himself, "This piece of wood has come in a good time. I will make it from it a table leg." No sooner said than done. He quickly took a sharpened axe to raise the bark and shape the wood. But when he was on the point of striking it, he remained with his arms in the air. But he heard a tiny, thin voice say, "Do not strike me too hard." Just imagine how surprised good old Master Cherry was. He turned his bewildered eyes around the room in order to see whence that little voice came, but he saw no one. He looked under the bench, and no one. He looked in the sideboard, which was always closed, and no one. He looked in the basket of chips and shavings, and no one. He opened the door in order to glance around his house, and no one. "What then? I understand," he said, laughing and scratching his wig. "I imagine I heard that little voice. I will start to work again." He took up the axe and again gave the piece of wood a hard blow. "Oh, you have hurt me!" cried the little voice, as if in pain. This time, Master Cherry became dumb, with his scared eyes nearly popping out of his head, with his mouth open wide, and with his tongue hanging down off his chin like a gorgon head on a fountain. As soon as he could speak, he said, trembling and stammering from fright, "But where does that little voice come from to say, 'Oh, there is nothing alive in this room'? Can it be this piece of wood had learned to cry and scream like, 'Hey, look at this. This is Master Antonio, and this is the piece of wood,' and scream like a baby? I cannot believe it. This is an ordinary piece of wood for the fireplace, like all the other pieces, which way boil a pot of beans. What next? What if there may be someone hidden inside? If there is, so much the worse for him. I will settle him." And saying this, he seized with both hands that poor piece of wood and knocked it around with pity against the stone wall of the room. Then he stopped to listen, so as to hear if there was any voice that complained. He waited 2 minutes, and nothing. 5 minutes, and nothing. 10 minutes, and nothing. "I understand," he said, forcing a laugh and rubbing his wig. "I imagine that I heard a voice cry, 'Oh, I will begin to work again.'" And because he was somewhat frightened, he tried to hum an air so as to make him courageous. Meanwhile, he stopped working with the axe and took up a plane to make the wood even and clean. But while he was planing, he heard again the little voice, that time in a laughing tone, "Stop! You are taking the skin of my body." This time, poor Master Cherry fell down as if he was shot. When he opened his eyes, he found himself sitting on the ground. His face appeared transfigured, and the end of his nose, which was always purple, became white from great fear. "Look at this. This is Master Antonio, frightened and been fallen down." Chapter 2. At this moment there was a knock at the door. "Come in," said the woodcutter, without having strength enough to arise. Then a lovely old man, called Geppetto entered the room. The boys in the neighborhood, when they wished to make him angry, called him cornmeal because his wig was of that color. Geppetto was very queer, though to anyone called him cornmeal. He became suddenly like a piece, and no one could hold him. "Good morning, Master Antonio," said Geppetto. "What are you doing on the ground?" "I am teaching the ants their ABCs. Much good that does. What has brought you here, Brother Geppetto?" "My legs. Do you know, Master Antonio, that I have come to ask you a favor of you?" "Here I am, prompt to serve you," replied the woodcutter, raising himself on the knees. "This morning I had an idea. Let me hear it. I thought that I would make a pretty wooden marionette. A wonderful marionette, one that can dance, walk, and jump. With this marionette, I wish to travel through the world and earn myself a little bread. What do you think of it?" "Very good, cornmeal," cried the same little hidden voice. On hearing himself called cornmeal, Brother Geppetto became as red as a pepper with rage, and turning toward the woodcutter, said to him furiously, "Why do you offend me? Who has offended you? You have called me cornmeal." "I did not." "I say you did. No, yes, no, yes." And becoming more angry, they finally came to blows. They scratched, bit, and rumbled. Each other seized each other by the hair. At the end of the struggle, Master Antonio found in his hands the wig of Geppetto, and Geppetto noticed that he had speckled the wig of the woodcutter in his mouth. "Give me back my wig!" cried Master Antonio. "Then give me back mine, and let us make peace." The old man, after having returned their wigs, shook hands and swore to remain good friends all their lives. Peace having been restored, the woodcutter said, "What then, Brother Geppetto, can I do for you?" "I should like a piece of wood to make a marionette." "Will you give it to me?" Master Antonio gladly took up the piece of wood that had frightened him so much. But when he was about to hand it over to Geppetto, the piece of wood gave a spring, and slipping violently from his hands, fell and struck the shins of poor Geppetto. "Ah! You are very polite when you give me presents. Truly, Master Antonio, you have nearly lamed me. I swear to you that I did not do it. Then I did it. The fault is all in the piece of wood. I know that, but it was you who threw it at my legs." "I did not throw it. Storyteller!" "Geppetto, do not offend me, or I will call you cornmeal, moo, cornmeal, ass, cornmeal, ugly monkey, cornmeal." Hearing himself called cornmeal for the third time, Geppetto lost control of himself, gave him a blow. When the battle was ended, Master Antonio found 2 scratches on his nose, and Geppetto a few buttons left on his jacket. And they again shook hands and swore to remain good friends all the rest of their life. Geppetto took up the piece of wood in his arms and, thanking Master Antonio, went home, limping all the way. "Look, this is Geppetto." And now Geppetto is carving the piece of wood. Chapter 3. Geppetto's home consisted of one room on the ground floor. It received light from a window under a staircase. The furniture could have not been more simple: a broken chair, a poor bed, and a nearly ruined table. On one of the patrons there was a fireplace with wood burning, but the fireplace was painted, and above there was also painted a boiling pot with clouds of steam all around it that make it look quite real. As soon as he entered, Geppetto began to make a marionette. "What name shall I give him?" he said to himself. "I think I will call him Pinocchio. That name will bring with it good fortune. I have known a whole family called Pinocchio. Pinocchio was the father, Pinocchio was the mother, and the children were called little Pinocchios." and everybody lived well. The richest of them begged. When he had found the name of the mayoralty, he began to work with a wheel. He quickly made the forehead, then the hair, and then the eyes. After he made the eyes, just imagine how surprised he was to see them look around, and finally gaze at him fixedly. Geppetto, seeing himself look at those two eyes of wood, said to the head, "Why do you look at me so? Eyes of wood," the response. After he made the eyes, he made the nose. But the nose began to grow, and it grew, grew, until it became a great big nose, and Geppetto thought it would never stop. He tried hard to stop it, and the more he cut at it, the longer that impertinent goes become. After the nose, he made the mouth. The mouth was hardly finished when it commenced to sing and laughed. "Stop laughing," said Geppetto, vexed, but it was like talking to the wall. "Stop laughing, Pinocchio," I repeated he again in a loud tone. Then the mouth stopped laughing and stuck out its tongue. Geppetto, in order not to notice the impudence, feigned not to see it and continued to work. After the mouth, he made the chin, then the neck, then the shoulders, then the body, then the arm and hands. Hardly he finished the hands, Geppetto felt his wig pulled off. He quickly turned, and what do you think he saw? He saw this. Pinocchio was taking the man's wig. He saw his yellow wig in the hands of the marionette. "Pinocchio, give me back my wig immediately," he said. But Pinocchio, instead of giving back the wig, put it on his own head, making himself look half smothered. At this insolence, Geppetto looked sad and melchingly, a thing he had never done before in his life, and turning to Pinocchio, "Bad little boy, you are not yet finished and already lack respect to your father. Bad, bad boy." And he dried a tear. There were now only the legs and feet to make. When Geppetto had finished them, he felt a kick on the end of his nose. "I deserve it," he said to himself. "I ought to have thought of this at first. Now it's too late." Then he took the marionette in his arms, placed him on the ground to make him walk. Pinocchio behaved at first as if his legs were asleep and he could not move them. Geppetto led him around the room for some time, showing him how to put one foot in the front of the other. When his legs were stretched, Pinocchio began to walk and then run around the room. When he saw the door open, he jumped into the street and ran away. Poor Geppetto ran as fast as he could, but he was not able to catch him. Pinocchio jumped like a rabbit. He made a noise with his wooden feet on the hard road like 20 pairs of little wooden shoes. "Stop him! Stop him!" cried Geppetto. But the people in the street, seeing the wooden marionette running as fast as a rabbit, stopped to look at it and laughed and laughed and laughed, so that it is really hard to describe how they enjoyed it all. Look, Pinocchio is running away from Geppetto. Finally, through good fortune, a soldier appeared, who, hearing all the noise, thought that some coat had escaped from his master. He planted himself in the middle of the road, and with a fixed look determined to catch the one way. Pinocchio, when he saw the soldier in the road, tried to pass between his legs, but he could not do it. The soldier, scarcely moving his body, seized the marionette by the nose, which was very ridiculous one, just the size to be seized by a soldier, and consigned him to the hand of Geppetto, who tried to correct him by pulling the ear. But just imagine, when he searched for the ears, he could not find them. Do you know why? Because in the haste of making Pinocchio, he did not finish carving them. Then Geppetto took him by the neck, and while he led him back, said, shaking him, "Wait until we get home, and I will give you a whipping." Pinocchio, at this threat, threw himself on the ground and refused to walk further. Meanwhile, the curious people and the lungers began to stop and surround them. First one said something, then another. "Poor Mirante," said one of them. "He is right not to want to go back to his home. Who knows how hard Geppetto beats him?" And others added maliciously, "That Geppetto appears a kind man, but he's true a tyrant with boys. If he gets the poor Mirante in his hands, he will break him into pieces." All together, they made so much noise that the soldier gave Pinocchio back his liberty and took to prison. Instead, that poor old man, who, not finding words at first which to defend himself, wept like a calf on approaching the prison, stammered out, "Wicked son! And to think I tried so hard to make a good Mirante. I ought to have thought of this at first." What happened afterward is a story so strange that we will hardly believe it. However, I will tell you in the following chapters. So I have finished reading chapter 3, and I hope you enjoy it. Bye bye. See you later in the next chapters.